I felt inspired to do another little stream of consciousness post-gym talk in the context of the coming speculative mania known as the crypto bull market, and what looks like, and now I'm pretty much totally sure that the buzzword of this one, what's going to be used to leverage investor ignorance, is this term Web3. And already in previous videos, I talked about the fact that we'll probably never have a full definition of Web3 and that it's really not all that important. But what I did want to share today, I think an important concept is what you should be looking for in the next 2 years as we're on our way up in the cycle. And maybe a little bit of an orientation of what you should approach. So why I'm not trying to define Web3 is because it's going to get us down a rabbit hole. Everybody's going to have their opinions on what Web3 means. That's the nature of the buzzword. The buzzword works because everyone has their own opinion of what Web3 is, and therefore they can put their own narrative on it and have a sense of agency and a sense of ownership about the term, and therefore buy in on the whole thing. This is, those of us who are old enough to remember the Obama campaign, first one for president, where he had the posters from Shepard Fairey. You could still go and look them up. Very powerful. And it was actually awarded, I believe it was by Fortune or Fast Company, Brand of the Year for Brand Obama. And the main branding was he had these two Shepard Fairey posters, and it was the Shepard Fairey propaganda, literally propaganda style. That's what Shepard Fairey calls that style. Obama's face, and one said hope, and one said change. Hope for what? Change what? No, that's the point. Everybody was able to put their own narrative around it because it was left wide open. And so this is kind of the investor ignorance. Then, of course, hope and change. And I remember Obama getting in and sort of me having to roll my eyes when he kept, those of us who were in the anti-war, anti-George Bush, remember, he was after George Bush Jr., and he kept George Bush's Defense Secretary Gates on, right? So the guy who was doing all of the military stuff that we were against and that people voted for Obama, he kept the same secretary. So much for your hope and change. But people still were unable to see that because, see, that wasn't within their definition of what needed to be changed. Okay? It's the same thing with Web3. So instead of Web3, and instead of DeFi, and instead of ICO, and instead of blockchain, and all of these things, they're all part of one thing. And if you haven't watched my Krista Rose video, I'll link it again. 4 years ago, he and I talking about snake oil salesman investor ignorance, and he goes into this whole thing. It's really, at the beginning, he even says, oh, DeFi is just blockchain by another name. So all of this is what Bitcoin and cryptocurrency was the promise of it to begin with. What you should understand is that the trends that are in any particular cycle are really going to be valuable, let's say 10 years from now, and what the purpose of this cycle is. And who knows why this happens? I mean, you could read Gustave Le Bon's book, The Crowd. Sociologists can talk about this. I mean, if you read Adam Smith or David Ricardo, you see that there's, whether it's the invisible hand of the market or whatever it is, something makes these cycles happen, and it's something built into sort of the nature of the crowd, the nature of human interactions with one another, where we get these laws, really. Where why is the bell curve normal distribution exactly how innovation is picked up? Go and Google diffusion of innovation curve, and you'll see that it's the exact same curve that follows IQ, that follows so many other things. It's just a natural law of when we start interacting with each other, because we are natural beings that operate within natural rules that our Creator has put into us. And so obviously in the things that we do, it's going to display this order. Part of this order is the cycle. So the things that are valuable now, in terms of where people's heads are at, the purpose of the speculative mania is to pump capital. That is to pump energy into a concept, and then that energy that's pumped in now will carry the development of that concept over the next, let's say, decade, when it will be ready to go. So everything that's being pumped in Web3, some things will be valuable, some things won't. But keep in mind that nothing is going to come to fruition for another 2 cycles probably. So 8 years, 5 to 8 years minimum. Could be a lot more than that. What should you be looking for in this cycle? Where should your attention be so that you don't get sucked in to believing that Web3 is literally anything? Because you're going to be told, oh, that's Web3, that's Web3, that's Web3. And you're going to say, well, what's Web3? And this person will say, oh, it's this. And this person will say, oh, it's this. So I'm not even going to say Web3. I'm going to say, what do you look for this time? Because what am I seeing? And what you look for this time, and again, remember, these are all things that from 2008, Bitcoin, these are all in the white paper, by the way. And not even in the white paper, but they're in the papers cited in the white paper. So for instance, Hashcash. For the technical among you, the one way that I can say it in an elevator pitch is replacing API keys with cash. That will make a lot of sense to a lot of people. Replacing API keys, which was the key with Web 2.0, the ingestion and use and leveraging of APIs, replacing API access keys, API keys, with cash. The technical people can start to flesh that out and see how that makes a difference. For the non-technical, what I would say about it is the entire model of how you use the internet, of how you move around and use the internet. Think about all of the things you have that are subscriptions, right? You have a subscription to your mobile plan. You probably have a subscription to your home plan. You have a subscription to all of these different things, where it may be online newspapers, right? Because it's behind a paywall. The entire model has to be subscription. And the reason why the entire model has to be subscription, even for those people who are developers, you probably have subscriptions to various different APIs, don't you, that serve you data, especially if you're in the crypto space, right? Alchemy, Infura, the entire Ethereum ecosystem, some of the most profitable companies are those that simply serve you up data. And this is actually what I was working on when I was at Bitcoin.com as the head of the developer services department, is subscription-based APIs. So you subscribe and you get data, whether that's the data on your phone, whether that's the data in your home. Okay, that's the key. The reason why that is because our current financial model, where you're going to pay with, let's say, credit card for the most part. Maybe now you could do direct debit, which is a lot better in some ways. But to do an instant payment, you're going to do it with credit card. And to do these recurring payments, it's mostly done with credit card or a debit card, as the case may be. You can't do things like micropayments. So it has to be subscription. What do I mean? Every charge that you make, you may not know this, but the merchant is being charged a percentage. So let's say that percentage is 3%, right? 2 to 3%, plus 10%, 10 cents per transaction, plus whatever monthly fees they pay that are a flat fixed monthly fee, which then they have to pro rata spread across all of the transactions to see how much each one, the average percentage that they're actually paying. Well, if we just take the 10% flat fee, or the 10-cent flat fee, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that you really can't be doing transactions that are like, let's say, less than $1. It's why when you'll go to a store that accepts credit cards, they'll often say, oh, we have a $5 minimum. You ever wonder why that is? It's because they can't make a profit. They actually lose money automatically on the transaction if it's below $5. Okay, because of the amount that they're charged, even just as the flat fee. It doesn't make sense economically for them to do it. So, what you should be looking for is so what's the solution? Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, is a digitally native, and I'll get into that more maybe in another talk, but digitally native, meaning that it's always started out in the digital domain, digitally native currency that can have sub-cent fees. In other words, if it's below a cent, you can't, it's nothing, right? So functionally invisible fees, so functionally free to the user and to the merchant, and it can be used in the process of sending a web request. So in the process that you go and you say, okay, I want to go to somewebsite.com. Somewebsite.com has the ability to say, I'm not going to let you in unless you give me half a penny. for your access. Your browser right now with Bitcoin, right this second, can send half a cent. Not with Bitcoin, but not with BTC, but with another Bitcoin that still is working. Okay, BCH, BSV, eCash, or even an Ethereum-based EVM that's still working like Polygon that has sub 1 cent fees. It can send half a cent at the same time as you are actually sending the request, and it can receive back the page without you seeing anything. Okay, well, what does that start to look like now? Well, an ISP can do that as well on every transaction. So now you no longer need a subscription to the internet. You just literally load your browser up with the digital currency, and sort of like a gas tank, as you travel around the web, your gas goes down, 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 down as you pay for all the places that you need to move through. And all of the websites, all of the ISPs, everybody is getting paid in this streaming money, as Andreas Antonopoulos referred to it years ago. So you imagine how this changes it opens up everything. I often tell people this is what you're sort of looking for. You're looking for the thing that is going to enable Joe Rogan to not need a Spotify deal, because he's able seamlessly to get, let's say, 10 cents per listen from every one of his listeners, right? Which Joe Rogan's audience will absolutely, if you say, oh, would you pay 10 cents to listen to that Joe Rogan podcast? Yeah, sure, no problem. 10 cents? Yeah, it's worth 10 cents to me. Okay, well, what does that look like? 10 cents when you've got 100 million views per episode. Okay? Per episode. Even 10 million views per episode. Okay? 10 million at 10 cents, 10 million views per episode is $1 million an episode. Joe Rogan's not making that now. Now, he could be making that without changing anything, except just leaving the Spotify deal, and he would own everything. That's what you should be looking for. That is coming. That might be 10 years off. It might be 8 years off. It might be 5 years off. But that's what you should be looking for. Those projects. Because those are the ones that are actually manifesting the thing that's going to be used. Those are the ones that you're going to be able to get into one way or another and invest in if you want to invest either your time or your money at a very good return on investment. Not only that, you're going to learn something. It's going to be exciting. You're going to really feel like you're moving something forward, and you're not just looking for a number go up. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share. We'll talk a little bit more about the digitally native idea. That's definitely going to be something. Maybe that'll be my next talk. All right, we'll see you next time.